Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages. I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, your friendly neighborhood Christian whistleblower, and this is the regular time for the midweek report with my good friend R. Wayne Steiger. You are used to seeing us every week at this time, and for some reason, I had a brain cramp, and I scheduled the lovely and talented Barbara DeLong to to be with me on Wednesday at 9, and I forgot about Wayne and I's regularly scheduled soiree. And Jen Fisher, one of my subscribers, said, well, just make it all three of you and make it a party. And I thought, you know what? That's a great idea. So that's what we're doing. It's a midweek report with Wayne Steiger, as you're used to, and Miss Barbara DeLong. Nice to see you again, Barbara. And
Good to be here.
Let me introduce you to our folks. Barbara DeLong is the creator of one of my favorite toys, the Cosmic Deck of Initiation. And it's really not a toy. It's a wonderful, I think, very, very elegant oracle deck. And Barbara did create that and did illustrate that. And Barbara is an author. She's got her own great radio show, which I've had the privilege of being on. And she, among many other things, is a medium, and that's what we want to talk about for the most part tonight. And Barbara, if you would, right from the beginning, tell folks how they can get in touch with you, get your information, so we don't let that slip by if I should happen to have another brain cramp, which is likely.
Sure. The website's real easy. It's www.barbaradelong.com. The YouTube site is Barbara DeLong. And that's really about all you need to know. Just remember my name and you'll be able to find me.
So it's just that easy.
Yeah, it is that easy.
So Barbara, how many years, I mean, you don't have to give us exactly, but how many years have you been involved in this spiritual work?
Over 50.
Really? Over 50 years? So you started when you were 2 or 3?
I was in utero.
Just like Wayne and I. It's amazing how that works out. Amazing. Now, define for me, if you would, in your terms, what a medium is and what mediumship is.
Okay, well, there are lots of different definitions of medium, and certainly the Spiritualist Church has an incredibly huge explanation of it. But yes, that book is an amazing book.
It is.
If you want a history of spiritualism.
From A to Z.
It will give you an amazing history of where we came from for the last 100 years. But today, mediumship is a lot different than it was back then. And while I did get training in the Spiritualist Church, it's not my philosophy. It's not what I live by. It's not what I study. It's not how I grow.
So you wouldn't consider yourself a spiritualist?
No, absolutely not.
Okay.
Absolutely not. I did for a long time study in the Spiritualist Church for 7 years. I was in their seminary, and I found it constricting, and it was caught up back in the 1800s, and it wasn't allowing me to go in the directions I wanted to go. It was not meant to be a church, but they've created it as a church, and therefore the dogma for me was overwhelming, and I was taking everything a step further. And I would say that I'm more of a student of the cosmos.
Did you ever go to Casadega, Barbara?
No, I never did.
I went there several times, lived right near it. That's a spiritualist encampment. It's actually it's a little city, and it's a city filled with psychics and
it is
fortune tellers, and it's really quite an interesting place. It's just outside of Orlando, Florida. Now, would you consider yourself a theosophist?
Probably closer to that, yeah.
Okay. And could you explain to folks what that is? I think most people have heard of Madame Blavatsky.
Well, yeah, I wouldn't exactly rank me in with her either. I like Nicholas Rorick's philosophies. He and his wife, they did a lot of work. I'm more into a universalist, I think, looking at at our place here, certainly on the earth plane, but realizing that this is only a stopover. This is only a place where we're here for a short period of time. And religions kind of hold people in fear into a very restricted place on the planet at this point in time. And if you say, I'm not sure I believe in your terminology as far as God goes, then people go, oh, stay away. And the reality is, I do believe that there is a universal consciousness, and we are all a part of that, and that we were created in love. And
Absolutely.
that we were sent out on a journey of discovery, and that's what our spirits are doing and have been doing for eons. But it feels to me as though people on the earth plane at this point in time are confined to the earth plane. It's almost like the earth is in many ways a prison, and they don't allow their consciousnesses to go beyond the planet into the cosmos, into the other realms and other dimensions that are there. And we can do that in consciousness. And as far as mediumship goes, I can see people when they pass over. I can communicate with them. But more than anything else, you come to realize that you have a spirit inside of you as well, and that spirit is powerful, and that spirit is fully developed. And the journey of this lifetime is to make a better connection with that spirit. And once you do that, then you have all of the cosmos that you have at your feet. You can pull on the wisdom that came through time. You can pull on Christ consciousness. You can pull on Mary consciousness. You can pull on any level of consciousness you want to and manifest it within your life. But you have to be able to know who you are first, and to identify with that spirit that you carry within.
Now, Barbara, did you know a medium named Betty Good?
Not personally.
Okay, somebody was asking if you knew her, that they remembered her mentioning your name.
She did.
Is that an honor? I don't know who Betty Good is.
I don't know. I hope in a good way.
They didn't say about that. Wayne, what's your concept of mediumship, and what questions do you have for Barbara in this regard?
Well, Barbara and I have done a couple of shows together, and I was on her radio show on Monday night. So I've gotten to know Barb in a lot of ways and learned a lot from her. And listen, I cannot help but not think that there is not a bridge between both dimensions, both realities. This, temporal plane that we're on, and then where we go back home to. And I think that people with Barbara's gifting is that they can help us over here understand that there really is something beyond the death experience.
Absolutely. And hello to Heidi Vandenberg in the chat room.
Hi, Heidi.
And she confirms what you just said, Barbara. Now, Barbara, my question is it seems like you talk to a lot of spirits for a lot of people. Why do you think there's so many spirits hanging around the astral plane and not moving on to another incarnation or another step up this ladder of ascension that many of us, myself included, think exists?
Well, I don't think they're hanging around. I think that when someone passes over, they do pass over, but that loved ones can draw them back in for a short period of time. I don't feel that there are. Let me put it this way. I'm sure there are lost souls. In all the work that I've done, I've never met one. Usually if I am doing mediumship, it's because someone is in need of information from their family or reassurance that their family is okay, and those spirits come in and give whatever identifying criteria they need to give to let the person know that they are indeed okay.
Interesting. It really surprises me. We've never talked to any lost ones. We'll talk more about that a little bit later. Keep going. I'm sorry.
No, I think that they do. We move on. We fly away. We go to another dimension, and in that dimension, we work on incorporating into that into the totality of our spirit, the wisdom, the knowledge, the things, the experiences that we have gathered on the earth plane in this particular lifetime. It enhances and gives us greater perception. It gives us greater breadth of knowledge. It gives us greater understanding of the journey that we're on. And usually the spirits are there for, there's no absolute, but average is about 100 years. It takes about that long for the spirit to let go of the density of the human experience that is still connected to it when it crosses over.
Right.
So that as that time frame goes and the density and the spirit becomes less and less dense, it then gets to a point in time where it's, let me see where else I can go, what other experiences I can have.
And you think that takes about a year?
No, 100 years. Sorry, 100 years.
100 years. Okay.
About 100. It's give or take 100 years, and you don't have to come back. I mean, there's no rule book that says you have to come back. But if you don't continue your journey, there's no point to evolution. So it doesn't mean you have to come back to the Earth plane either. You can go into other dimensions and other planets and other galaxies and other whatever else is out there.
Right. Now, in my spiritual cosmology, I think of it in terms of going, the spirits that leave this earth plane are up in the, what we would call the astral realm. And it's only the ones that for some reason don't go on to their other destinations that you've spoken about that we contact. So that's just my frame of reference, because I deal mainly with spirits that are in peril or in trouble or lost, as the way you put it. But what you're telling me is, even after a spirit goes past what we would call the astral and is into their other place, that we can still call them back even from where they've gone beyond the astral, and they'll come back sometimes and interact with us?
Well, it's not calling back. It's connecting to their consciousness.
But it's, so some of it's still here, even though they're way gone?
No, their consciousness is still out there.
So, and we can connect to them beyond our, what we would call the astral realm.
Oh, yeah.
Interesting. Wayne, what do you think about that?
I tell you, I've been giving a lot more thought to mind, capital
Mind. Okay. Yeah.
And I'm still evolving on this because I think the consciousness of humanity individually is still evolving as our science begins to catch up with sometimes our theology, or vice versa. Here's what I'm beginning to think. The spirit is energy. That never goes away. However it was created, whenever it was created, it doesn't go away. I'm becoming more convinced it's the mind that connects us from the spirit to that next experience along whatever journey we're taking. And mind is the expression of the spirit. Otherwise, the spirit wouldn't have a way to express itself.
And I've had a somewhat limited view of this. I'm saying, I was thinking our world, the astral realm, and that's the only time we talk to them. And then once they go to where they're going, they don't talk to us anymore. So I have something new to consider, Barbara. Thank you for that.
Well, you're actually, you both come from a theological background, and so do I, but not as theological, and in not as.
There's some truth to that.
Yeah. So you two may be a little more heavy duty than I am. I only served for 5 years in the pulpit, so I'm kind of a not as.
You know what that makes you, Barbara? Smarter.
Yes, wiser.
Could be, but in my personal belief system, at least what's been serving me for the last 25 or 30 years, is that what happens on the earth plane stays on the earth plane. If you're a nasty,
just like Vegas.
Yes. and so you don't immediately get punished because you did something bad. It was an experience you had to have, and you had it, and it will help to enhance your spirit once you get to the other side. But we've been everything from priest to prophet and whore to saint, the whole thing. We've done it all. And those are all experiences that add to the richness of the spirit that we carry within. Go ahead.
No, here's something I've been thinking about lately. So we talk about punishment, consequences, right, for actions, but I'm beginning now to question, all right, define bad for me. I mean, you could have cultural differences that one culture would say that that's absolutely an abomination, when another would find it an absolute right of very sacred.
That's interesting. And I lived in Vegas for a while, and the joke was, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, but also stays on your record. And I think that there are things as well spiritually as a being that stay on your record, and probably some things that are more culture related that maybe don't have quite the karmic consequences. So it's a very
what is bad? I mean, that's what I don't.
I think bad is probably a human concept or a human construct. What is good? What is bad? What is right? What is wrong? What's black? What's white? I think that those things are of necessity, probably culturally defined. What would you say, Barbara?
I totally agree with you. I feel that if you take our belief systems, any of them, and put them in another dimension, in another universe, they won't know what you're talking about. They aren't, those structures, the dogmas that most people live by are man-made.
Right.
We created
I think
them.
of Heidi and doing the Vedic astrology and the Vedic life coach. I mean, there's a lot of things in India that we would be totally aghast about. That's horribly wrong. That to them is, hey, that's just the way it is, and it's not even questioned. So it really, right and wrong are, I think, predominantly, if not exclusively, culturally defined.
I would agree with you on that.
And it's relative. It's also relative to the level of consciousness of the person experiencing it.
What do you mean by that?
I mean that if someone has grown up in that you have to kill in order to survive, then killing is not bad. It's survival. Right. But if you're in a culture where killing is not a really good idea, then it's a bad thing and against the law.
But even in our culture today, we have a dichotomy on killing, because we say individually that if I take a life in an act of passion, an act of aggression, or even in some cases self-defense, that is punishable. However, I will recruit my youth and I will train them that they need to kill, which is necessary for our society to continue to maintain where it's at. And if you look at it from a theological, that's why, I have such a problem now in particularly the Judeo Christianity perspective. We have the 10 Commandments, and one says that thou shalt not kill, only when it's not convenient for the particular cause of power. So how do you deal with that in the afterlife?
Good point.
Well, in the afterlife doesn't have those rules.
See, that's what I'm coming down to.
And
there's Barbara, would you agree that there's no cause and effect in the afterlife?
Yes, the afterlife is merely sort of, I call it the green room.
And I think it's because there's no time. In order to have cause and effect, you have to have time.
Sure, and not only that, but it's really a transfer station. Mm-hmm. It's not a place where there is judgment or punishment. There is none. Your spirit
Which is why I don't think it's a great idea to take a lot of advice from astral entities, because they don't live in the same world you do. And I'm serious. How many people out there are taking advice from astral entities, spirit guides and ascended masters and all of this stuff? They don't live in the same world you do. They're not subject to the same rules and laws that you are. So what may be a really great and sound advice in the astral realm could be disastrous here on the earth plane. So consider that.
Well, to that point, I don't believe there is such a thing as guardian angels and masters and ascended masters.
Well, we are singing from the same sheet of music there, Barbara.
Okay, I truly believe that our consciousness, the spirit that we've got inside of us, is a master. We wouldn't be here if we didn't have that riding along with us. And quite often, people are insecure about listening to that whisper within. So they will either project holographically an image of a saint or a master or whatever, and their spirit will speak through that particular image. And you know, it's really, you're talking to yourself. When you're praying to God, you're praying to yourself. You're talking to yourself.
That's so good. I've been trying to explain that to people, and I haven't been able to do it as elegantly as you just did. Who do we pray to? Who do we worship? Who do we get guidance from? Everybody wants an angel, a God. You know, it's you. It's your higher self. And if you're not comfortable yet praying or following the guidance of your higher self, which is, in my opinion, an Elohim, God, you're a baby God, and you can reach to your divinity, then maybe it's okay to externalize that in the form of some type of a, like you said, Barbara, a hologram that you can feel more comfortable accessing. But realize it is your higher self. It is you, and that's who you pray to. That's who you worship, and that's who's ultimately going to save you. Nobody's coming back to save you. It's you, me, myself, and I. That's the real Trinity.
Patrick used to say, and I don't know where it came from, I don't
Your
think it was
husband,
his. Patrick. Yeah, he used to say, we are who we've been waiting for.
I say that all the time. I finally found the one, and I'm him.
Oh.
And this is one of the books that Patrick wrote, The Real Apocrypha. I keep telling Wayne that'd be a good one for him, Patrick Cook. And I have another one here of his as well, The Greatest Deception About UFOs in the Bible.
That's a good book.
It is a good book.
Excellent.
Very good stuff. And these are both from Patrick Cook.
Oh, glad they were added to your library.
Absolutely. They're on my reading it shelf. This is the top is the reading it shelf. If it's turned with the pages like that, I'm reading it. So Wayne and Barbara, let me ask you a question. I discovered probably about a year ago that Peter, the Apostle Peter, said that both he and the Christ and the rest of the apostles would go into the spiritual realm and evangelize people that left this earth with inaccurate information that was hindering them from moving on to their full spiritual reality. I call it astral evangelism, for lack of a better word. How does that concept hit you, and what would you say to it? Both of you, please.
Well, when you get to the other side, you're pure spirit, so there's no need for that.
Well, why would Christ and Peter be doing it then?
Well, what old man in a skirt wrote that?
Okay. Wayne, what do you say?
I got to go with kind of Barbara.
Where's the mute button for Barbara?
You know,
Where is that?
First of all, I saw it because I was thinking about this today. I was actually baking earlier today.
Did you have on an apron, Wayne?
No, it's a good time of meditating, though. I mean, cooking is really food alchemy. It really is. And here's what I'm coming to. All of our belief systems here in the Western culture is of a Hebraic nature. And, you know, and when I hear people talk about the Christ message and what have you, and I'm scratching my head going, so what was the message of the Christ? That I need a savior?
So that was the message of Jesus, not the Christ.
Okay, so if the message of the Christ is to help ascend to that other place, boy, someone hijacked the message along the way.
Absolutely, and his name was Paul.
And did a great job of it.
Oh yeah, very thorough.
But you look at these guys, they had to say that to make themselves important so people would listen to them.
Absolutely.
So
which has got to be the worst reason for saying something, in my opinion, but
it worked.
It worked, and it still works. That's the beauty of it.
Right. You know, the message over there in every church is the same message. It's love. It's you know, you're preaching love. You're talking love. We were created in it, and we're meant to magnify it. We're meant to manifest it within our reality as best we can. And you know, we all have the same spark of the infinite within us. You know, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And once we hit the other side, we're perfect. Why would we have to be reach to if we have total cosmic consciousness.
Well, unlike you, I've run into a lot of souls that are lost and sometimes even trapped. So we'll have to debate that one out. But Barb, when someone talks to you and asks for your help as a medium, how does that process look?
Usually they have just lost somebody that they care for, and I usually will sit and talk with them about it. And not always, but usually I can get a hold of that spirit. I can get a link to it. I think one thing
How do you do that?
It just happens.
You just meditate or put your intention on it?
No, I think I think that's a good point to make here. I don't do anything out of the ordinary. Everybody can do what I do. Everyone. And basically, I trust that I will get a feeling, I will get information, and I will be able to give it to that person. And but it comes naturally. Intuition, mediumship, astral travel, all of this stuff comes naturally to us. It's just that we're taught that it's not possible, so we begin to believe it, and then we don't even seek it out. It doesn't need to be meditated on. It doesn't need to be prayed upon. It doesn't need to be protected. It's a natural tool that we all have, and if you become familiar with it, if you begin to trust that silent whisper that you hear every now and then and pay attention to it, you do make that connection to your higher consciousness. And when you do that, anything is possible.
Absolutely. And a good question before I forget it. Are you able to talk to a person who has passed and already reincarnated?
You can hit their, yes, you can get out, you can link to their consciousness as they were before they reincarnated.
But you're not talking to the person that is actually reincarnated.
No, because that spirit is taken on another personality. It has become another energy, and therefore it wouldn't have any relevance to that the past life.
So there's an energetic residue even after you reincarnate.
Yeah, and basically what you're doing, and I think the one thing that people should understand is I had somebody say to me, he gave me the name of a man, and he said, I want to connect to him. It's somebody that he was studying, and I said, I don't have any connection to him. And he said, well, can't you just tune into him? And I said, no, I don't have a connection. I don't have a map to follow to get to him. You never met him. You never spoke to him. You never touched him. And I could go through his energy to get to that person if he had met them. He didn't have to, it didn't have to be a long, lengthy anything, but he had to have that connection. And if they don't have the connection, you can't tune into them.
So do you mean to say that you can't unilaterally connect with whoever you want? You have to have a connection with a person in front of you to that person you're reaching?
That's the way it works for me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Wayne, you're quiet down there.
Well, I'm listening, and sometimes, you really gain more because you got two of those with one of these. But as I was listening to the conversation, I'm thinking to myself, and so here's where my mind goes. If extraterrestrial life, in fact, exists within the universe, which I do believe it does, I wonder if they're held to the same constraints or it's the same construct that we are, in the fact that they view death in the same manner that we do, that they anticipate that there is life beyond that, of which I tend to think that it's universal, maybe not the customs or the way that we define that, but I think it's the same thing. And I'm thinking that when we talk about making connections, I just thought to myself, well, how could you make a connection to an historical figure 100 years ago? You're assuming that individual that you're reading about is actually that individual that actually lived. How could you know? I mean, you wouldn't know. There wouldn't be any connection.
Do the dead communicate with coins?
They do leave coins. They leave pennies.
Someone was asking here in the chat room if you believe they communicate with coin.
Absolutely. Wish it was silver dollars, but it's usually pennies.
This lady was talking about dimes, or this person I think was talking about dimes.
They have been known to do all denominations. I got pennies. When Patrick passed away 2 days later, I was changing the bed and I had everything stripped off. And when I went to put everything back on, there were 3 pennies right on the side of the bed that he slept in.
Interesting.
And I don't sleep with money.
Yeah, I wouldn't either. Let
And
me ask you.
if I did, it wouldn't be pennies.
I was going to say.
Exactly.
Not pennies. No.
Many years ago, when I was still a silly Pentecostal evangelist, I used to go to this gathering over in Germany, in a place called Berchtesgaden, Germany, and that's horribly pronounced. It's a place where it was Hitler's Berghof, and he was there all the time. He that was one of his regular hangouts. They built it for him. And when we were down in the bottoms of it, there's what would you say, tunnels there, his private area. When we were down there, we would hear his voice calling his dog Blondie. We didn't know it at the time, but after doing some research, we would actually hear Adolf Hitler's voice calling his dog. We would see figures in the black SS uniforms. And what would you say that was? Is that residual energy or what, Barbara?
I would say that's probably a time loop. It's something that happens over and over and over again. It was imprinted in time. There was probably a great deal of energy around
You have
that.
to spit on it though, rocker chick. We're talking about pennies still.
Oh, okay.
You said find a penny, pick it up all day long, you have good luck, but you got to spit on it.
The reason why I think, Barb, that that residual energy sticks around in those situations,
Time
is
loop.
that you think about it, there was a condensed 4 to 7 years that literally each day tens of thousands of souls were being pushed out, and many times in very traumatic ways, that although they make that transition, that energy is still going to be left behind. And I think in this case, when you have built a sacrificial altar and you've put over 25 million people, and that's how many people were killed in World War II, that's going to have an impact on the timeline.
Well, there is one other explanation. And because I wasn't there and didn't experience it, I couldn't tell you exactly what it is. But there are times when timelines overlap, and you may have been picking up another timeline at the same time. You have 2 timelines overlapping, and when you do, you're seeing what's going on in the other timeline, but you can't touch it or experience it. You're just seeing it.
Interesting. So, Wayne, are you saying that it was energetic residue, or you think it was a time loop as well?
I think that it actually pierced the fabric of the space-time continuum. When we have dramatic events that humanity does to itself, that's a release of a lot of energy, and that energy has to go somewhere.
Interesting.
And it's no different than, let's say, that the gamma ray that hit the Earth in 2008. That gamma ray was 7 billion years old, but the energy impulse was still alive and still traveling at the speed of light. So to me, that seems very normal. And then when you begin to think about the ley lines of the Earth itself, and you begin to plug into these electromagnetic connections, that ethereal energy is going to stay there and it's going to resonate.
But it's so interesting to me that it was such positive energy. I mean, it was Hitler's voice, whistling and, Blondie very sweetly for the dog. And when it was me and a couple buddies of mine, when we would see the SS officers, they were laughing and, drinking a beer or doing some shots. So,
but that was positive. Love.
Yeah.
But that was love.
That's true. It was love. So even Nazis had love or felt love.
Yes. Even Nazis had love. Yes.
Even think about that, folks. The guy who we think of as probably the most notorious, horrible person in history, what I felt down there wasn't the hate, wasn't the murderous intent, but the love of calling that dog Blondie and, here, girl. And wow, that's quite a statement. That kind of gives me
Well,
chills.
it's probably one of the best relationships he had. It's probably the only, I mean, when you stop to think about it, dogs give you unconditional love, and we give it back to them as best we can.
That's absolutely true. That's
Well, the
absolutely
story
true.
today in I think it was the New York Times, I believe, that says that humans would prefer
Yes, I
dogs,
saw that.
yeah, than humans. And I went, okay, yeah, yeah, because it is unconditional love. You know?
Wow, that's very, very interesting. So, Barbara, when people come to you and they say, I want to contact Aunt Charlie or, Uncle Charlie, Aunt Bill, whatever.
Yeah.
And have you ever had them say, we're trying to find out where they left the money?
Yes.
How does that usually work?
Well, you can't. First of all, you can't you can't sit down with a medium and say, I want to talk to so and so. Mediums open a portal and spirits come in.
But they do it all the time in the movies, Barbara.
Yes, but they're lying in the movies.
Oh my God.
Just doesn't happen that way.
Shocked.
But I'll retell the story. Wayne's already heard it. I was doing a spirit circle and I had a spirit there, and the spirit fell between two women, and I kept saying, I kept describing the spirit, and I said, it's for one of the two of you, and I just can't tell. And they looked at each other, and they finally said, that's Dad. And so, it was their father who had recently passed, and he was very angry, and it's probably one of the few times I've experienced a spirit coming through really angry, and he was cursing up a storm at the two girls. And he knew he was going to pass. He had laid his clothes out that he wanted to be buried in, and the suit he had laid out was a good suit. But they chose to give the suit away to somebody else who could use it, and they buried him in an old suit that had been hanging in the closet. And he was furious because he hadn't been buried in the clothes he wanted to meet his maker in, and all of all of that stuff. And finally he looked at them and said, you've been looking for the key to the safety deposit box, haven't you? They said, yes, Dad. Where is it? Where is it? He said, it's with me. You buried it with me.
Wow.
And they exhumed the body and got the key.
That cost them a little bit of money.
It cost a lot of money.
Yeah.
However, the safety deposit box took care of it. There was a lot of money in it.
Interesting. What do you think about Madame Blavatsky?
Well, aside from being slightly crazy with her monkey and all, she was ahead of her time. She really, she really, from her perspective, she went eons and eons and eons. I think that her work is amazing. I think she was a little bit crazy, but taking that into consideration, she's worth a read for sure.
Well, you don't have to be crazy to do this type of work, Barbara, but it helps.
It helps a lot.
It does.
It helps a lot.
Wayne, do you have any thoughts on Madame Blavatsky?
I like her works. I do.
I do as well.
I think that in the quest for knowledge, we're all trying to figure out the story.
Thank you, Michelle.
The thing that I find is every time I open my mind up to a new point of view, that requires you to think deep. You can't take it on the surface because it just goes right over your head. That tells me there's some substance there that needs to be meditated upon. So I like her works, and I'm adding it to the mix.
She makes you think.
She does.
She does. Absolutely.
Wayne,
what else about mediumship in your mind or on your mind?
When I look at this, I often think about the fact, all right, do ghosts exist? Can they manifest themselves? And the more and more I think about it is that I think the vast majority of us are going to be glad that we can get the hell out of here, And I've been thinking about this, it's like, all right, what was it that the Christ said? Let the dead bury the dead. Isn't that, and let the living go on and take care of the living? It's that great line in the Shawshank Redemption, you know, either get busy dying or get busy living.
Well, you know, when you say the word medium, it's the same as the word channel, and it's someone who is able to bring information through. But with every single person who is a quote medium or channel, bringing it through, it picks up parts of them. So if you're going to go to a medium, make sure that they are happy and healthy and content, because otherwise you're going to get information that is colored by where they are in their lives.
You mean the medium themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's no way about it. You bring information through yourself, but in order to do that, you're using your vocabulary, you're clearing a way for information to come through, and you know, you have to make sure that the person you're sitting with is in a good place. And so many people will go to psychic fairs, or they will go to somebody that, you know, was just fabulous for someone else. They don't take the time to check people out. And I think it's really important to do that. Even more so, just listen to yourself and you can make the connection yourself.
I like to add on the channeling. Now, for myself, you know, I'm channeling, there's information being channeled to me every day. And the more I pay attention to it, the more sensitive. I have legal pads that now fill boxes full of the information that is coming. I can't write sometimes fast enough, which tells me that, yeah, I think that we all have that ability to a degree, or maybe it's a natural flow. We just have been taught, like you said earlier, Barbara, we shut it off at a very early age because we're told to.
Well, what happens is we start thinking instead of allowing. If you let things flow through you, you're not thinking about what you're gonna write. It just comes, and the minute you start to analyze it and think, you pull yourself back into the physical realm and the densest part of your consciousness.
Now,
You ever worry about channeling something that isn't ideal for you?
Me?
But either of you?
No. If I am in that energetic, I know that whatever I bring through is going to have relevance.
And I don't seek it. It seems just to come.
So you don't worry about it being like, I think sometimes in my mind, automatic writing, is that a possession of something else taking a hold of you and you're just like this? And are you comfortable being just this in the hands of whomever or whatever is dictating?
Well, I'll tell you something, Jeff. If something else takes over, it's your ego.
Okay.
More likely than a spirit.
What say you, Wayne?
Well, I think my brain is capable of doing 100 trillion calculations per second. Do you know how far I've been able to actually pierce that?
I would agree with you. If you're tuned into your blink and you've got your, you know, analytical mind dialed in, I'll be frank with you. I'm still dubious on channeling. I'm still dubious on channeling.
Well, study Tesla. One of the things as Tesla in his later life began to understand, he began to understand the force of the ether. And he began to write a lot on that, on the forces that the ether has. And he even said himself that there was times that he felt that the information coming to him was of another origin. And, you know, well, one of the things I'm learning about Tesla is that he didn't believe in gravity. He said it's a false science. And I'm going, okay. So, you know, who knows? I mean, the way I look at it, and the thing I'm getting more sensitive of it, is that our species, we're still evolving. Evolution is still taking place. And the knowledge we're getting today, I have no doubt that we have, you know, they had a program on the other night about the star children. They're showing up all over the world. And at the age of 6 and 7, they're doing advanced calculus. And they have memory recall. they know that they're not from here. And I keep asking myself, well, are we seeing a new age, a new shift? I know this is totally off subject, but I've been studying as well. I didn't realize there's an advanced theory in astrophysics that says that our solar system is not of the Milky Way, that we were in fact part of the Sagittarius galaxy. So I'm beginning to think, all right, if there are greater forces greater than us that we call gods, that we put them out there, are we in a cosmic battle? And then I thought what you were saying earlier,
Between
Jeff,
different us's?
well, against different entities.
Oh, okay.
I mean, if you have one entity that could be defined by having rulership of a galaxy, and it conquers a lesser one, are we the victims of the war?
Interesting.
I don't know. I'm saying we don't know what we don't know, Jeff and Barb. That's just it.
Yeah.
And we struggle with that. Is that because when we begin to see people come up with new ideas, new epiphanies that may not jive with the way that we see things, I'm beginning to understand maybe they're bringing a new enlightenment to the subject.
Right. And
All
you're
right, so that was my
you know,
answer.
finishing up on the channeling, I have sat down and wrote a 300-page book in 3 days too. But I mean, I'm channeling my higher self. I'll be honest with you. I don't like the idea of channeling other entities. I don't want to give over my sovereignty to another entity to take over and talk through me. That's just me.
Well, I don't think I have another an entity at all talking, unless it's they're a great poet or a great writer.
See, I would say that you're channeling your higher self.
Yeah,
Wayne.
It's
that
like
would be...
John Lennon said. John Lennon said that he could sit down and write a song literally in a minute, and they asked him, where do you get it? And he said, and in fact, Van Morrison said the same thing.
Yeah.
It just comes.
Yeah.
It's just like something came in and just dumped it.
Mm-hmm. And I heard Lennon say that he would write when he was, under the influence of some various intoxicant. He would think, oh, this is the most profound thing ever. And then he would read it when he sobered up and he'd realize it was just rubbish. So it was the stuff when he wasn't jacked up that was good, and the stuff when he was jacked up, not so much.
Well, I wrote a whole book of poetry that was channeled. I can't write poetry, in like in the here and the now. I mean, I even have trouble with there was an old lady from wherever. I mean, I just don't do poetry. But all of that poetry came through when I was doing channeling for other people, and so it got slammed together.
Interesting.
Well, there is that theory that says that knowledge, the cosmic knowledge, is stored in waveforms, energy, light, whatever, that it doesn't go away. It's just that we haven't attuned our spirits to be able to attune to that knowledge.
I totally agree with that.
We are our own hall of records. We carry the wisdom of everything. Yes.
You guys just got me started.
Wayne's pointing his pen.
All right. Well, think about it. As we've cracked the human genome, what we're finding out is that as we continue to get down into the cellular level, that when we first cracked the human genome, we realized that within each cell was over, I think they said 100,000 Library of Congresses.
Oh, wow.
That's what's stored in the cell. Now they're doing the next level, mitochondrial DNA analysis, and what they're finding is even yet more information stored even at the smaller level. So, Barbara, you just said that we are our own vault of records.
Yes.
Why would we, each one of us individually, contain information that if we had the ability to mentally link to would make us freaking gods?
We are gods.
See, that's my point.
Well, each of us has different experiences throughout all of time, so that while we can link to cosmic everything, we carry our own hall of records with us constantly. And a fun piece of trivia: we have 46 chromosomes. An elephant has 56, and there's a fern and the woolly mammoth had 58. And the hermit crab has 254 chromosomes. So when you stop to think on the evolutionary scale, yeah, a sweet potato has 48 chromosomes. So that the chromosomes are the building blocks to recreate ourselves, right? So a hermit crab is more complex than a human being. Food for thought.
That is food for thought. Exactly.
The things that make you go,
Barbara, I've been asked a couple times in the chat room, what's the best way for a beginner to start using these?
Probably getting to know the cards, and first of all, and understanding that there were, different levels of consciousness that made up each set of 11, and then the astrological size. The deck of cards symbolizes the journey of the spirit through a lifetime.
Were the cards channeled, Barbara?
Totally.
Oh no.
Totally. I have absolutely no art training.
Wow.
None. Now, I had been painting personal mandalas for about 10 years before the deck of cards happened. So there are
look at the art on these cards.
There are like 500 personal mandalas all around the world. And then the cards happened. And then I stopped painting.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. Very, very interesting. So get to know the cards. I have to ask you this, Barbara. And every time I read this, I say to myself, I'm going to ask her, and I always forget. Why isn't it in alphabetical order, the cards?
Because they were created in a specific order.
Oh, it drives me up a tree, Barbara. I'm like, why couldn't she just put it in alphabetical order? I got to read through the whole book every time to find every card. Why can't she just make it alphabetical? Sorry.
Why don't you get some stickums, and then you can hit each different level, and then you know which category to go to. They were created. The first 11 cards have to do with the physicality. The second 11 have to do with the laws that govern us, and the third 11 have to do with the spiritual laws that are constantly in motion within our lives. And then you got the astrological, and then you got what I call the wild cards, because I threw them in.
That would be like the guardian angel cards and.
Yeah, unity, duality, trinity, the guardian angel cards, and miracle, and then the threshold card.
And Trinity doesn't mean what you think it means, so don't get spun out on that. So you would say read the instructions, and that's probably the hardest thing for a man to say. For a man to do is read the instructions.
Well,
but I read the instructions, and they're quite intuitive once you read the instructions.
Yeah, it helps. And the layout, the big layout, the 36 card layout, gives you the 12 months of the year. Mm-hmm. It gives you the 12 astrological houses. It gives you from the inner circle out. It gives you body, mind, and spirit. It also gives you past, present, and future. So it gives you a tremendous amount of information, and then. It can even go further. So if somebody is saying, I have to talk to a lawyer, when would the best time be? You have the face of the clock. You can see where communication is going to be the easiest and tell them what hour to call and talk to the lawyer.
Oh, very nice. You'd lay out either 12 cards in a circle, or you could even do it 3D and get more insight.
Yeah, you do. I would do 13, so you'd have a central card too.
Right.
But it gives you it gives you which time frame would be more conducive to, if it's an intellectual thing, or if it's an emotional thing, or if it's a legal thing. You can figure out when would be the most appropriate time to utilize that energy.
Interesting. Did you happen to catch the 12-month prediction I did using your cards?
I did. I thought you did very well.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. Wayne, have you been introduced to these yet?
Yep. I'm learning, so I take it a little bit, one step at a time. For me, it's not a gift that I have, but I like it.
Yeah, I could just see Wayne overthinking them. But
Well,
what does it mean by universal wisdom? Is that universal in this universe, or is that all universes? And is
Well,
that big U universe or little U universe? And is that marijuana?
We do live in Colorado.
That's right. That's right.
I have found that some of the best readers with this deck have been men.
Really?
Yep.
Interesting. Very, very interesting.
I mean, a lot of women use it, and it is an oracle deck. It's not tarot. It has nothing to do with tarot, except tarot means card. So in that essence, it is tarot. But it is meant to give you information on your own process, on what's going on in your own life, and it's not meant to be used, as it's not something you use casually. It will give you philosophy. It will not give, and it'll give you wisdom. It won't tell you what to do with your life, but it'll help you to understand where you are and where you're going.
And it really does. And I have to tell you, I just got a real nice gift. I want to say thank you very much to Monica. Thank you very much. It is truly an oracle deck. I have to say that, and I'm, as you can tell, kind of a tough sell, but it definitely is an oracle deck, and you did a wonderful job with it.
Well, they came through me. They weren't of me. So, but the interesting.
Just don't say that again, Barbara, because I'm kidding.
You have a dirty mind.
So you're telling me they're channeled, and I don't like channeling, so I have to maybe there's some growth possibilities there for me.
Well, let me. There is something else that's very interesting about the deck.
What I do like though is Groupon, and I have a little trouble with Groupon because I keep ordering them.
The deck, when I did it, the same patterns came through some priests in an ashram in Pacific Northwest, and there are a lot of the same patterns in that group that are identical to the cards, and they use them as portals to other dimensions. I went with a friend of mine to a Native American healing circle, and there were two shamans there, and I did not know we were supposed to bring a gift. I didn't know it was traditional, and the only thing I had with me was a deck of cards, so I gave the shaman the deck of cards, and he and his assistant pulled me aside. It stopped everything, and they pulled me aside, and they were looking at the cards, and he said, "Were you aware that these are power shields?" And I said, "No." And he said, "Where did you copy them from?" And I said, "I didn't. They just happened. I drew them." And he looked through them a couple more times, and he said, "It must be time that they're shared." And at the same time, in England.
So what does that mean, Barbara? That they're power shields, that they're connections to other dimensions? What do you say?
It basically is saying that these same patterns have come through at the same time frame in many different forms. They are many, and the other place that you'll notice them is in the crop circles that started to be publicized.
I noticed that. I did notice that when I read them.
And they are also, which I didn't know, a lot of them sacred geometry. So that the patterns seem to have come through in a lot of different places. That's when the sacred geometry book came out after the deck was published, I might add. And so that the patterns have meaning above and beyond what meaning I put into them. They have a life of their own. And that's why I think the cards are becoming more and more popular now. I told the publisher when they were published in '91 that they were sleepers. that it wasn't time for them. And, he just looked at me. And then after 20 years, he stopped publishing them and I got the copyright back and now they're very popular.
Nice.
Very nice.
I've
Their
had a
time
lot
has
of people
come.
say to me, "Hey, Jeff, I bought those cards. I should have worked out a deal with you." I'm just kidding. The more the merrier for you. Wayne, final thoughts.
No, listen, I think we're in an age it's a new age of awareness. We have talked about before the golden age, the dark ages. As I see it now, there is a stirring, I think, that's taking place in the consciousness of humanity. I think this is a stirring that has been long overdue. And we're seeing the result of that. We're seeing the result of conversations like we had here tonight, what Barbara has done, what she brought to the consciousness of humanity.
I'm not done.
That's my point.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. You used the past tense, Wayne. She didn't like that at all. She jumped on it.
I'm talking about the cards.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We're not writing the obits yet.
As Doc Holliday said, nonsense. I'm in my prime.
But we really are. I really do believe that
Thank you, Lyndon.
we are seeing a greater of awareness, and I'm seeing it coming from all different directions. Whether you're seeing it from those of the religious sector, whether you're seeing those from more of a neutral perspective, scientific, everyone is realizing that maybe we don't have all the answers. That instead of opposing, I think we're asking. And Barbara, as you said, when you did the cards in 1991, they were a sleeper. They were meant for a particular time. And it appears that that time is now.
I mean, even right within our little circle that we have, you got Heidi Vandenberg doing, the Vedic life coaching, which many people are finding, very, very profound. Barbara and, the cosmic deck of initiation, which people are finding very, very profound. And then there's just babblers and scribblers like Wayne and I, but we're all helping out, and it's all coming into a great synergy. And like Rex, another babbler, and we're trying to all babble as good as he babbles. So it's nice to see this synergy coming together, and there's no competition. And I look at Overwatch channel with Dan, who's also, I think, kind of coming into our orbit, and there's a lot of good stuff out there. And it's nice when you have cooperation and not competition. I remember there's a couple of things that Jimmy Swaggart said to me that were profound. And one of them was, there's two ways to have the biggest church in town. One is to build up a church that it serves more people and more people come to it. The other way is to tear down everybody else's church so yours is the only one left standing. And we don't have much of that latter motivation within our group, and I sure hope that continues.
Well, I was asked, I got 3 requests from the show that I did last night, the Death Factor, and people they said that they'd like to see you, Heidi, Barb, myself, and even bringing in Rex in on the conversation and discuss what really is that death preparation. People want to know, as I've told them that, I still say the idea of having transition centers where people can come in, and I'll just share this with everyone. So I had a person write to me from Mexico City, and he said, I watched your show, and he said, he was just saying, bravo, bravo, bravo. He said, I want to tell you why we worship the dead, the Day of Souls, and why it's represented by skeletons. He said, we believe that if you teach the young that this is the inevitability of the outcome, then you can go through life living life. And he says, death becomes a friend, not an opponent.
That's awesome. And we are doing an event here in Clearwater, Florida. I will have the date narrowed down tomorrow. I'm trying to get some input from Heidi and a few other people that have talked about coming down for it. And it is going to be loosely called What to Do When You're Dead. understanding the understanding death and navigating the death plane afterwards. Probably do a session in the morning, have a lunch, and do a set in the morning session, and then one in the afternoon. So we will be doing that later this month, early December. I'll have that date narrowed down this week, and hopefully that's maybe just the first of many around the country, Wayne.
I think the time has come. I really do. I think people want to know. I like the idea that death is not an enemy. It's a friend. I mean, go ahead, Barb.
Barbara,
Well,
please.
it's someplace in the Bible, and I'm trying to remember if it's Psalms or Proverbs, and I think it's chapter 20, where it describes death, and it talks about how you're born and you struggle for 50 or 60 years, and more if you're lucky, and then you toil, and then you die, and then the next line is, and then you fly away.
Yeah.
And to me, it's important for people to understand that you do fly away. You truly do. You fly away. You leave the body behind, and you move on to a new beginning. And the Chinese have it right. They dress in black when a baby is born, and they're very mournful. And they dress in white at funerals because they're celebrating, because the life is over and they've gone on to another dimension.
I've read that the moment of death, that when we hit that threshold, it's totally orgasmic. It's and how it was described, the way it was written, is that every cell, every nerve expends that energy, and it's such a rush coming into the spirit and the soul that just is what sends us off.
Well, I mean, to your point, the death erection is a noted reality. It happens. It happens.
Does. And
but even more profound, Barbara, in
I thought that was pretty profound, though.
in one of the Star Trek movies,
I just
Jean-Luc Picard. He's no Captain Kirk, but
no, he's not.
Jean-Luc Picard says that it was the one, but Captain Kirk was in the movie. It was the Star Trek Generations.
Yeah.
And Sarek, the villain, had told him, maybe his name wasn't Sarek. That's anyway.
It was McDowell.
The guy that Malcolm McDowell played. Yeah. Malcolm McDowell had told him that time was a predator, sneaking up on you, and it was going to catch you and kill you. And then at the end of the movie, Picard says, someone once told me time is a predator, but I now know that time is more like a friend, come alongside to help and guide you along the journey. And I think that's a great way to look at it. And I think it's an accurate way to look at it. And even though Picard said it, it's still true.
Well, he did conquer the Borg. So
he did conquer the Borg. Of course, it would only taken Kirk half the time and
of course
less resources.
But it brings to that whole point that I think that if we could, as a culture, and this is just me speaking, that if we could just get the fear out of the portion of this and say, all right, this is how it goes, I think you would live life. I'm telling you, I really do believe it would be even more intense.
Absolutely. And as spiritual people, we are incredibly hypocritical. We teach that this is not us. We teach that we're really spiritual. We teach that this is just something that's, temporary. And yet nobody is teaching how to deal with death and how to navigate the after death landscape, or very, very few. Final thoughts from you, Barbara, please.
Well, I think that I totally agree with you but we make death such a frightening thing. We don't make it a comfortable, loving thing. And
I think that's by design from the dominant religious paradigms.
Absolutely. And if people understood that it was the beginning of the greatest adventure ever, that they wouldn't be as frightened of it as
this would do, folks? You know what this would do if this mindset began to thread through the consciousness of humanity? It would empty all the churches, number one.
Absolutely. And that's my goal.
It would change politics on a global scale, because politics would not be predatory as most worldwide religions are. I think it would begin to change the consciousness of man.
Oh, absolutely. No doubt about it.
Yeah.
So bravo.
No doubt about it. Someone said that, I'm not sure how to take this, Wayne, for you and I, but they said you should change this to a three-way talking called the Midweek Trifecta.
Hey, there's always room for improvement.
There's always room for improvement. Barbara, it's been a joy and a pleasure and an honor as well to have you with us.
Thank you so much. It's been a lot of fun. I enjoy both of you.
Thank you for sharing your information on and your ideas on mediumship and also on the great cosmic deck of initiation that you created.
You're
And
so
Wayne,
welcome.
Thank you very much. And Wayne, as always,
always
thank you
fun.
so much.
Thank you, Barb. Thank you for coming on.
My
So
pleasure.
one more time, Barb, your contact information, please.
The website's www.barbaradelong.com, and the YouTube channel is Barbara DeLong.
And R. Wayne Steiger, how do folks contact you?
R. Wayne Steiger, come on over on the YouTube channel.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Always a lively conversation, guarantee it.
And you know how to contact me because you're already here. And we appreciate you being here for the Midweek Report. Wayne and I are back on Sunday with Not Your Normal Sunday Morning Show at 9 a.m. You can find Barbara on what radio platform carries your shows, Barbara?
Freedomslips.com.
Freedomslips.com. And you also have a blog talk
Radio
show as well, right?
I do.
Excellent. Excellent. So for our special guest, Barbara DeLong, and for my good friend, R. Wayne Steiger, I'm Jeffrey Daugherty, your friendly neighborhood Christian whistleblower, thanking all of you for being here and saluting you for being here, seeking truth. And until the next time, please stay fearless, my friends, and unindoctrinate yourselves.
Good night.